Hello, and welcome to the Frog for Life podcast. I'm Rob Berline. I'm joined today by TCU's Assistant Professor of Professional Practice, Patty Zamarripa. And Patty is joining us today to talk about the things she's seen at TCU, what she sees at TCU now, where TCU is going. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, glad to be here.
Well, as we said, you are a professor here currently at TCU, but before you were a professor, you were a student at TCU. So can you tell us a little bit about why you came to TCU all those years ago?
Yeah, I had some family members who were TCU alumni, and so the name TCU was familiar to me. Fort Worth was familiar to me, but I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, so I mean, it's a whole other experience down there. It's like little Mexico almost. And so the idea of getting out, beyond Austin was weird and kind of foreign to me. But I had an opportunity to come up here for PSIA, which is like UIL competition, but for private schools. I went to private school, through 8th grade. And the state competition was here at TCU. So I got to tour TCU and just kind of get a feel for it, and I just knew like this was a great campus, and I don't know, the vibes were great. I also went to the state competition the next year at SMU, and I knew TCU, like Fort Worth was my vibe. So.
You knew TCU over SMU from an early age.
Early on, yes.
Well, that's good. And then you actually come to campus, and did the expectations meet reality?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was everything. I don't know what I expected, but what I got was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved the experience.
And what were some of the things you got involved in as a student?
So, pretty early on, well, I did sorority recruitment. So I was in the Kappa Eta chapter of Sigma Kappa here at TCU. It was still kind of a fairly new sorority, so it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved my time with all those ladies and getting to know them. So I was involved in that organization. But beyond that, I actually came to TCU for theater.
Theater?
Not journalism.
Really?
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, I just ran in the other day to Dr. Harry Parker, who is the chair of the theater department. And he was walking in our hallways, and I said, "Dr. Parker?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, I'm Patty Zamarripa. I know you don't remember me, and that's okay, but when I was trying to decide whether I wanted to come to TCU or a different school, I got lost in the theater, and I wanted to talk to somebody who was available to tell me about the program. And the reason I chose TCU was because you stepped out of your office and you said, "Come on in, I got you, I can talk to you." And so just that like one-on-one personality is what really drew me here. So I was involved in theater, all 4 years of school. And then, of course, I was involved in student media, and I did a couple of other organizations here and there. But the main ones were, Sigma Kappa, Theater TCU, and then, of course, student media.
And so you must have developed a very good time management system, because from what people that know the TCU's theater program, it's top of the line. We have alumni such as John Devereaux in Hamilton, so TCU's theater program is phenomenal. Of course, the journalism program is phenomenal. The Greek system is phenomenal. How did you find a way to get all the hours done in the day?
I have no idea. I didn't sleep very, very much, I can tell you that. I think I had to make some tough decisions, My first 2 years, I focused a lot on school and getting my, my core done. But I was fortunate that I came from a high school where a lot of our credits transferred. Mm-hmm. So I came in, I kid you not, with like 30 or 40 credit hours, like something ridiculous credit hours of core stuff. So I was actually able to double degree and minor in 4 years and still do all the extracurriculars. I still had a lot of sleepless nights, and going to rehearsals in the evenings, and then coming over here, running across from Ed Landreth or wherever to over here. Waiting for the daily skiff to go to publish, so that was fun. It made for an interesting 4 years.
And so what role did you hold in theater? Were you an actress? Were you behind the scenes, or?
I did my first 2 years. I did auditions. I was in one play my first year, my freshman year. Gosh, I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I did. It was some Greek play. And so I did that. I did acting, and then after that, I kind of transitioned to behind the scenes. I realized that, maybe acting wasn't going to be my end goal and my future. So I decided to kind of try some other stuff. So I did costume building, and I did lighting and design, and set building. I think costume building was my favorite. I loved sewing, and yeah, I mean, I was so proud of the pillowcase I made.
Yeah. That's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
So at what point did you know that you wanted to transfer your attention from theater to more the media side?
Oh gosh, I'll never forget the moment. I had just finished an audition my sophomore year, which is perfect timing because you have to declare a major by the end of your sophomore year. So it was kind of perfect timing. It was fall semester of sophomore year, so that would have been 2007, I think. And I sat on the steps of my sorority house. I had just finished doing this audition, and I think ultimately, I can't verify this. I don't know the facts. I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure it came down to me and this one other student. Mm-hmm. It was a senior for the lead role in this play. And it went to the senior. I knew it was going to. Before they even told me, I said, this is going to go to the senior. She's so good. She's so deserving. But also, it's her senior year. She's going to get it. And part of me was like devastated at that, right? But at the same time, I was so proud of myself. I was so proud of the fact that I had gone and done this audition, and as a sophomore, I was up there with the seniors, and I just felt so proud, and I felt like everything that I had learned up until then had, really prepared me for it. And I know I put my best foot forward. And it sounds so silly, but I was so proud I cried sitting on the steps of the Sigma Kappa house, and I was crying on the phone with my mom, and I said, I did it, and I didn't get it, but I'm so happy. And I'm okay leaving theater. I'm okay transitioning out of that. Mm-hmm. It's my passion, and I will forever love it. And I'm okay just loving it and not being part of it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be okay with me. I have such a love and appreciation for it. And so I thought, what else can I do with being in front of an audience and mm-hmm. telling stories? Journalism was where I needed to go. Mm-hmm.
And so you come over to the Maudi building and learn your skills, and this is a much different place when you first come over than the new studio that we're currently in. So talk about that transition as you had to focus from theater to then you were going to go focus on media.
It was very intimidating. It was so intimidating because I never thought myself a good writer. I just felt like I was good at telling other people's stories and becoming a different character, and I thought that was where my strength was. And so coming to journalism was so overwhelming at first. You had to take a writing test at the time. I think there was a writing test, some grammar tests that I had to take, mm-hmm. and that was terrifying
GSP.
To me. Yes, that's what it was.
Yes.
Yes, it was so terrifying. Because if you didn't pass, you couldn't get in the anyway. And there were all these just incredible people with just such intensity and passion for their job, and I just didn't know if this was going to be the place for me. But I was nearing the end of my sophomore year. I had to make a decision, and I felt like I kind of had to put my effort forward, and I did, and I'm so glad that I did. But there's a lot of lessons that I learned from theater that I was able to apply to journalism, mm-hmm. And I still use them to this day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you graduate from journalism, you have to leave the nest that is TCU, we can help you at any time with whatever you need, sure. nest that's here, and go out to the real world. So tell us about your professional journey after you left TCU.
So when I left TCU, I was fortunate that I could go to grad school right after. So I went to graduate school at UC Berkeley. and did their Masters of Journalism program. It's a 2-year program, very rigorous. I was one of 2 people that came straight from college in my class. You know, you have to think 2010 is still a lot of people who are learning new skills like social media, who are coming back to school for their master's degree. And so it was again another moment of intimidation, because I was studying with people who had years of experience in the journalism business, but were coming back to learn skills with me on the same level. So that was it was a cool dynamic, but it was definitely scary at times. So I did that, and then I did a producer program with NBC. I was placed here locally at the NBC station here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, number 5 market in the country. So I was so fortunate to be here and learn here. And I want to say like 8 months in, it was a 18-month program, but 8 months into my program, NBC hired me full time and said, no, we need you here. And so I worked on the morning shows with NBC5 at KXAS for 7 years, 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I came back here.
So what were some of your favorite stories that you worked on during your time as a professional journalist?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint because there were so many moments. I was a producer, so I didn't work on any one particular story. You know, I worked on an entire newscast. I definitely think probably the most impactful and the lessons that have really stuck with me are from the July 7th ambush on the 5 Dallas police officers in downtown Dallas. I think that was just so, that was a moment where I was no longer new and I wasn't quite a veteran yet, I didn't feel, but I was kind of in this in-between. And I really felt like that taught me so many lessons. That moment taught me to be a human on top of a journalist. It taught me to be a team player, but also to have empathy. I got to field produce with Deborah Ferguson, another TCU alum.
TCU alum, yes.
Yeah, and so I field produced with her, and I remember chasing down the mayor for a live hit at one point, and I remember waving at Deborah, and I got the mayor, and wrangled him over. So President Obama was coming, I think, for the memorial that was happening in Dallas, and so that's where we were field producing from, and just seeing Media Row, like that whole experience was just so surreal. So I hate to say it was my favorite moment because that was such a tough time, right? But at the same time, it's one that has just really stuck with me. Yeah.
I mean, the trauma of such a significant event, you have to learn all the things on the fly, and also during that time, that's when technology was changing. We're learning more about this live to go, this live streaming aspect of being able to produce wherever you go. So how are you keeping up with the technology that was changing from everything was record to tape to get back to the newsroom to now you can get your mobile unit out and send it straight to the newsroom out of a live feed? Yeah,
I definitely learned a lot of that while I was at NBC5, but I also learned, I didn't know this about myself, but I also learned to be very entrepreneurial and have that mindset when I was at UC Berkeley, because they just, again, it was like 2010, Twitter was just kind of becoming a thing, and, Facebook only had, 5 years, 6 years on it. And so all this technology stuff was still, going out with a live view backpack, like that was new to me. So I think the skills that I learned about myself and the skills that I picked up at NBC5 have definitely helped me here at TCU, because if you ask any one of my classes, broadcast classes, how many of you watch the news? Maybe 2 out of 30 hands will go up. but they're studying to go into broadcast, but none of them watch the news. So how does that work? How do you get them to do the news and watch and consume at the same time? I mean, the reality is that there's just not a traditional sense of doing the news for them anymore. So it's teaching them there's a time and a place for this, but you also have to keep up with mobile journalism and where that's going, 5G and what that allows us to do. So I enjoy learning about all these different options and staying relevant and up to date. And I still get my fix, and I in the newsroom I freelance at NBC every once in a while, and so I'm able to keep up with what's happening in the industry and also have time to go explore and play with other fun stuff.
And you won an Emmy while you were a professional journalist, so tell us about what the Emmy was for and how that process came about.
I never thought I would win an Emmy. Like, that is just so, I still can't believe it that happened. But the Emmy was for a set of storms. It was storm coverage. Storms blew through North Texas. I was a morning show producer, so I think I was doing the 6 a.m. at the time. And it was 2017. It was March, so springtime storms, lots of tornadoes, straight line winds. That was something I got really good at doing when I was at NBC, was weather coverage, doing wall-to-wall weather coverage. So a set of storms had just blown through North Texas overnight. By the time the 6 o'clock news hit, it was no longer that the storms were a threat, it was the damage and the just sheer enormity of the damage that was left behind. And so that was what my Emmy was for.
And then you go from professional journalist to where you are today, back at TCU as an assistant professor. How did you decide to make that transition?
I'm a big believer in things happen when they're supposed to happen, and I think this happened when it was supposed to happen. So in 2018, I worked overnights. I worked the morning shift. My husband had a regular 9-to-5 job. So we were ships in the night. Like, I'd be waking up to go to work. He'd be coming to bed to go to sleep. And so we just missed each other all the time. We realized that really wasn't working for us anymore because we wanted to start a family. And so I made the decision. I was ready to take a break from news so I could focus on trying to build a family with my husband. And I left. I made the decision. I announced I was leaving, and worked for a few months, got us through sweeps, and then May 2018, my last week at NBC, I get this email from a former professor at TCU. And he says, "Hey, I'm actually leaving. I'm gonna go take this dean position at a different university. You should apply for the job for my position. I think you'd be great at it." And I thought, there's no way this is by accident, right? Like, the universe is trying to tell me something. So I applied. I came in and met with the dean and the chair and all these new faces that had no idea who I was, and I didn't know who they were, and told them who I was and that I was willing to come in and help until they could make a hire. And if they hire me, great. And if they don't, I understand. My background is in the newsroom. It's not in academia. So it just so happened that they went ahead and hired me as an adjunct for a year to teach the broadcast class. And I ended up getting hired after that year. And here I am.
And so how did you learn to teach broadcast? Did you have a curriculum made for you, or were you just making it up as you go? Or
I had curriculum to kind of look at and see what other people have done, but I just knew there were specific lessons. I come from a family of teachers. So I've seen my mother do this many times and put a lesson plan together. And so I just knew there were certain outcomes that I needed students that I felt we were looking for as when I was a producer. There were certain things we were looking for in young journalists. And so I started with that. What are my outcomes? And so I listed them out, and then I said, okay, how do I achieve those outcomes? Well, they need to learn this, and they need to learn the power of sound. They need to learn this and that, and writing, and how to do headlines and teases, because that's a whole other ball game. And that's how I put my curriculum together, and it just worked. And I guess I was good at it because I'm still here.
There you are.
I'm still doing it.
And so you go from being the student in a TCU classroom to the professor in the TCU classroom. Did you have that culture shock moment of, it wasn't that long ago I was on the other side of this desk?
Yeah, that was interesting. I have memories of, I think it's the agency, the ad agency that's over here in the corner, Roxo. That used to be like a closet, our equipment room, and an editing lab where I had my production classes. This room did not exist. It was something totally different. I had classes downstairs when I took, at the time it was RTVF, radio, television, and film, classes, and taking classes in Ed Landreth. I'll tell you, it's really weird, is taking my daughter at 6 months old or 8 months old, something like that, to music classes, the baby music classes that they offer here, taking her to the same classrooms that I took theater classes in. That's weird, having my daughter there, roam my old stomping grounds. And so I'm so happy to be here, though. I think part of the reason why I went and got my master's was because I just always hoped that I could come back one day and be part of the program in some way. And I didn't know you needed a master's to do that, but I thought it can't hurt, right? And I'm so glad that I did.
And you've seen the student from when you were there and then 2018 onward, and 8 years doesn't seem like a long time, but technologically and facilities-wise, it's another era almost. So how would you say the TCU student has changed from when you were in school to how you teach now?
Yeah, the students are different, but the level of dedication, just academic integrity, I don't think that has changed. I think TCU has always recruited really smart students, with integrity in them and who want to do something in the world and have an impact on it. I actually think that's probably even more so true now than it was years ago. It's totally different generations. I'm a millennial. I'm teaching Gen Z. I have my first students who, today, September 11th, I have students whose families died in the September 11th attacks. That's just, it's entire generations that have, just gone by. And it's, I think the type of student is more empathetic. I think the issues that they care about and the way they want to tell stories is different. But the same drive, the passion, the attitude, all of that is there. It's TCU,
And in the desk we're sitting at, we're in a professional newsroom, basically. Yep. How much of an advantage does a TCU journalism student have in the job market compared to most any other university, considering they're actually getting to practice in a real newsroom?
Yeah, you can't beat this. This is so vital to their education. Not every university is fortunate to have this kind of equipment, these kinds of resources. So it's so important that we take advantage of that. We do broadcast, live stream our newscasts every single week from this room. They all worked back in the day when they first created this room. It was called the Convergence Lab, because there was this new theory of converging all of these things together. But now it's just it's just a newsroom. That's called a newsroom. You know what I mean? That's called a newsroom. And so they're getting that real world experience, so that when they leave here, that's not foreign to them. They understand and they're ready to go. There's still a lot of experiences that they have to go through to learn from, but for the most part, this really helps prepare them, I think.
And so probably for some of our older alumni, they remember, as you talked about, the skiff that was delivered Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays.
Yeah.
And then you had, I think, you had the TCU radio station, which is downstairs, and then TV station you started to see a little bit, and now it's just all become one thing. TCU 360. So, I mean, there's really no silos anymore in a TCU journalism program student.
Yeah, it's just like a newsroom should operate. It's TCU 360. That's kind of the umbrella of student media. But then you have your content online, and then you have the 109, which is reporting that's specific to the 76109 zip code, which is the surrounding area of TCU. You have our political coverage as well, PolitiFrog, and then one of our editors, our editor is sitting over there, PolitiFrog. You have TCU Sports Now, which is just nonstop sports. You have Unscripted, which goes beyond TCU sports, and it's student run and produced and shot and edited and all that. You have The Leap. You have TCU News Now. You have Image Magazine. You just have so many things that live under TCU 360. We have podcasting. Everything lives together, just the way it does in a real newsroom.
So the TCU student can have quite the portfolio for when they graduate that not many other universities are going to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're fortunate that, we have what we do have. We used to be downstairs in this huge lab or in this huge studio, which is an amazing studio, and it's great. But we also can have so much flexibility. There's just something to be said about working in a newsroom and shooting in a newsroom, and not so far removed, from where our students are editing their stories. I mean, they can literally edit a story on a computer, and then 30 seconds later, once it's done and exported, upload it into here. That's so convenient. That's huge for us.
That is. Getting away from the professional parts of TCU, tell us about maybe your favorite memory on campus, whether it was a student or a professor, or as a professor.
Sure. Gosh, my favorite memories, I'll say memories because I have many, but I think one in particular was, this sounds so silly, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but my friend at the time was Alexis Miladinoff. She's now Alexis Rodriguez. She's married and has a beautiful daughter. She and I were journalism students, majors together. And this newsroom had just been built. I mean, it was like months old. And we sat over there in that corner and these computers. Justin Bieber had just released a new song. I can't believe I'm saying this as if I were a fangirl. But Justin Bieber had just released this new song, and there was nobody in the newsroom, and we blasted it. I mean, this is when Justin Bieber was like a baby. He was still a kid, but we were like, it's the greatest thing to God's green earth, right? And we just jammed here, hanging out in the newsroom. That was the kind of environment that this place created for us, where you could go from serious to fun to silly in seconds. And we were working on our stories while we were here. It's not like we just came up here to listen to Justin Bieber. We had it playing in the background, and we decided to take a break from our work. And this space in particular is just so awesome. You still find students doing that every once in a while when we're not recording podcasts in here.
So I may know the answer to this, but we'll ask anyway. What is your favorite place on campus?
I mean, I would say this. I would say like the Ed Landreth or the Hayes Theater or the Walsh Theater. But actually, this might actually surprise you. I guess it's Scarborough. But old Scarborough when it was the Main.
The Main.
Yes.
The Main.
When it was the Main. Yeah, and it was just, everything was a big parking lot,
Yes.
and the Blue and the Commons didn't exist.
Nope.
Yep. I love
and did after I graduated. They kicked me out and said, you all have nice things now.
Yeah, I loved the Maine. I thought it was like just the coolest thing to call it the Maine. I'm going to the Maine. It just felt so like Saved by the Bell, you know, like we're going to the Max or whatever, but we're going to the Maine. Yeah, I loved being there. I don't know why. Like the food was good, I guess, at the time. There was like a little convenience store, like Starbucks there. Yeah, it was fun. I loved
Pizza Hut and Taco Bell.
Yes.
Thing.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
the Pizza Hut. Yes. Oh, the food back in the day was good.
The
I don't know.
cheese sandwiches for the Maine were legit.
I don't know what it's like anymore because I hardly ever go there. But oh man, it was so good. And there was like a walk place in some basement.
That was in Reed. There was Deco Deli and
a walk place and a salad
and the
place.
Salad place. It was Eaton's, and then there was. I'm sure
Yeah.
people are commenting on us right now, telling us what it is. But it was, yes, the walk downstairs, all in Reed. There was 3 places because I had English class up until 11:50, and then I went downstairs and did a different one for lunch each time.
Oh man, it was so good.
Yes.
I loved the walks. They were so delicious. And the cool thing is like that same, I guess the personality, the culture that still exists where you are friends with the people who are cooking and, you know, they know you by name and they're serving you. They know you by name because you're there every single day. Like that same type of culture still existed. And so I remember they would just be like, you're the beef with the spicy sauce. And like, they knew my order.
That's right. You talk about that they know you by name, they know your order. It's the people feel is what everyone tells us is the special sauce of TCU. What if there's a person or persons that maybe had the biggest impact on you? Who would you say they are?
Well, definitely Dr. Parker because he took the time to welcome me in. I mean, that was number one. I mean, not even my first day. I hadn't even accepted. I haven't even said I'm going to TCU, and he was already showing me that kind of, you know, personality, that kind of love for students. But I also I think Dr. Suzanne Huffman. She used to be the chair of the journalism department. She always went to bat for me. She was she's still such a huge supporter of mine. I love Dr. Huffman. If you're watching or if you ever see this, I'm just so grateful to you. Now, I think the person who just made me realize this is what I was meant to do was journalism, was Deborah Ferguson. Yeah. She came to my class one year.
Really?
Yeah, my senior capstone class. It was like a senior seminar. And she came and she just talked about her life, and I just remember going, oh my God, that's who I want to work with one day. And then I got to work, with her, and I got to be a producer for her for years. And we're still close to this day, and we text every once in a while, and I still see her. And
Did you remind her when you first saw her in the workroom, hey, you spoke to my class? You know,
I did, and she probably was like, oh, okay. Like I don't remember what her reaction was, but I still remind her to this day. You know, I hope she knows the immense impact that she had in just that one sitting with me. And then after that, years later, I mean, it's Deborah Ferguson and like the lessons that she taught me and just the care she took, not just in me as a coworker, but like as a person. I don't know how many people can say that they have found that, you know, at their university. And sure, she wasn't working at the school at the time. She wasn't working at TCU at the time. She was at NBC. But I think that's just the kind of, I don't know, culture that TCU instills in you. And I think I see that every day, even still. And I try to do that with my students too. Yeah.
And you're currently the assistant professor of professional practice at journalism. We're just going to go out on a limb here one day and just in a fantasy say you become the chancellor. TCU is currently in its 150th year, the sesquicentennial. So if they say you could be chancellor for a day, what do you think TCU should do to make sure the next 150 years are as successful as the previous 150 years?
Gosh, that is so above my head right now. I can't even think straight of like just probably the immense pressure and day-to-day stuff that Chancellor Bershini has to go through. But I think, just, I think impact, ethics are so important, integrity, so important. Our dean talks a lot about that with our incoming students, and I think she's onto something. I think she knows what she's talking about when she says that, because really, I mean, the way people operate these days with technology and how easy it is, but how easy it is to spread misinformation, journalism aside, just putting false information out there about whatever it might be can be so detrimental and so dangerous. And so I want TCU to grow in those areas. I think TCU already has is already doing great work toward that, but there's always room for growth. I want TCU to thrive and succeed and be, yes, a small school and in a small town, but we're big at the same time. We think globally, and we are leaders in the world, and we do lead on, not to be corny with our their campaign message, but I think it's important to continue to create those kinds of people, because I think it's safe to say we'll always have people who are academically smart and driven. We'll always have people from all different walks of life who can contribute to the world in one way, shape, or form. But let's do that with integrity. Let's do that with ethics in mind. Let's do that with love in mind, and recognize that yes, we're a small school in a small town, but we can do really big things and have a really big impact. And we've seen that happen, time and time again. Let's keep doing that.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. This has been phenomenal. Let us use your set. This set is, again, I feel like we're at NBC5. And so thank you again for joining us today.
Sure.
You can catch more of this at alumni.tcu.edu or on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts.